Travis, let me know when we can go.
5 seconds. Okay, you are live, Commissioner.
Well, welcome to Cumberland County Commissioners meeting of Tuesday, October 12th, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. The commissioners are holding their meeting on Zoom while the public may watch the YouTube video live stream on Cumberland County, all one word, .org/live. A reminder also, the public may submit email comments by sending them to kennedy@cumberlandcounty.org prior to or during the meeting. So I will ask a call to order. I'll ask the clerk to read the roll. Yours, yeah, there you go. Ted.
Commissioner Cloutier,
I'm present.
Commissioner Coward,
I'm here too.
Commissioner Jameson,
Here.
Commissioner Matonis,
I'm here.
Commissioner Gordon,
Here,
all present and accounted for.
thank you. I've added an item here, acceptance of the agenda. I suggest that I've moved the two homeless support letters items to the consent agenda under and I guess what I'm asking for is, may I have a motion to approve that move?
So moved.
Hello?
Second.
I don't think there's any no discussion. Those in favor? Roll call. I'm sorry. I'm got to get used to this, Catherine.
Could I ask a question, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
I may want to move those off the consent agenda if when we get to those, but I don't have any objection to the motion, so I would say yes.
Well, wait a minute. If you want to move them off, yeah, because what we should do then, Jim, are you talking about both homeless support letters?
Yes.
Then let's amend that motion so that we move them from where they are to new business.
I'm fine with that. I say yes.
Okay.
And I'll second the amendment.
Okay, good. So those in favor, roll call?
Commissioner Cloutier,
Yes.
Commissioner Coward,
Yes.
Commissioner Jameson,
Yes.
Commissioner Matonis,
Yes.
Commissioner Gordon.
Yes.
All right. And pass.
Unanimous. Okay. With that, I will ask approval of the minutes, and if there's some objection to what my motion is, fine. May I have a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes
So moved.
of September 13th and 27th as written, and the emergency meeting minutes of September 29th as written?
Second
So-
Sue's motion.
Yeah.
Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Catherine, we need a roll call.
Commissioner Cloutier,
Yes.
Commissioner Coward,
Yes.
Commissioner Jameson,
Yes.
Commissioner Matonis,
Yes.
Commissioner Gordon.
Yes,
All right.
so
5-0.
that's unanimous. We are now at the informational and report presentations, of which we have two. The first is by Sheriff Joyce, the status of the jail. Sheriff Joyce.
Thank you, Commissioner. We're in a lot better shape than we were 2 weeks ago, thankfully. Amazing what a difference a couple weeks makes. Currently, we have 8 inmates that have tested positive for COVID. We have 6 in one pod, and 2 just came back positive today in a separate pod. So that's a little concerning, and I'll talk about that as we go on. So we have 8 total. Out of the 6, or out of the 8, 4 will come off the COVID list on the 14th, October 14th, and 3 cases will come off on the 18th. We did testing today at the recommendation of CDC for 2 pods. And the next round of testing should be Friday or Monday for inmates. Now, the concerning part with the 2 cases we got today was when I came to work, my thought is trying to have a soft opening of intake. However, the 2 people were in a separate pod than what we thought we had this COVID lockdown in. Make matters worse, one of the individuals has been working in the kitchen. And although masked, that could bring us some issues. We don't know. Keep in mind that most of it's aerosol related, but we cannot lose sight of the fact that that person was working in the kitchen. So everybody, with the exception of the 2 pods affected, are back to normal operations where they're out of their cells the regular amount of time. The only difference is that everyone is eating their meals in the cells to try to discourage close contacts. We also have 5 employees currently still out. 3 of them are related to the COVID outbreak, and we have 2 employees that they had close contacts outside the jail with family members, so they're out. Testing being done on employees today and tomorrow. Like I mentioned earlier, intake is still closed. I was going to try to open up today with just taking those arrests that were felonies or crimes against people, basically public safety related issues. But because of these 2 individuals in a large pod having connection with the kitchen, I was encouraged to hold off until we do another set of testing. And I guess it makes sense because I don't want to open it up and then have to close down again. It's easy to stay within that window. So my hope is next week, Monday, will be a different set of circumstances. We have 6 people that are waiting to go to MDOC, and in a meeting with CDC today, they asked if they could help out. They couldn't guarantee anything, but I asked if they could work with DOC. And I would jump through whatever hoops we could to try to move the 6 inmates that should be in their custody to DOC, thus lowering our count. And I have 2 people that are mental health cases that I have more than that, but 2 cases that really, I believe we should really start thinking about putting them in a hospital and not in a jail environment. And again, because we have COVID, right now, currently, Dorothea Dix and Riverview doesn't want our inmates. So we're working on that as well. As far as staffing, we still have, like I said, the 5 employees, and all are expected to be back to work by next week. And 3 of the employees will be back by the end of this week. We have 1 RN that has tested positive for COVID. She's out. And we are expecting 2 off from FMLA. They were on FMLA, and 1 additional employee by the end of the month. So we'll gain 3 employees back there. And we've hired 3 new certified corrections officers, 2 of which are already on the floor, and the 3rd one will be starting later this week. As a matter of talking about hiring, we have 29 total applications for corrections officers. 9 of the applicants are certified corrections officers, so they won't have to go to the academy. 20 of them are non-certified. My understanding is there are 9 conditional offers out for employment. That means that we're starting their background and looking at polygraphs. Of those 9, 6 are certified corrections officers. 3 are non-certified corrections officers. As I mentioned, we've hired 3 certified COs, the last one starting this week. And we have 1 with a potential additional 1 hired to go to the November 8th Corrections Academy at the Corrections Academy at the Maine Criminal Justice Academy. And then lastly, we have 3 of the 29 scheduled to take an alert test on the 14th, with 1 more doing it on the 26th. So I'm pleased to announce that we're a lot better off. My consternation right now is these 2 cases in a separate pod and the linkage to the kitchen. And we want to take it very slowly and make sure that these are just fly-by-night cases and not having it spread throughout a pod that's got 60 inmates in it. So the next couple of days will tell us a lot, and I'll answer any questions.
Questions from the commissioner. Commissioner Cludier.
Sheriff, I appreciate the report, and I'm glad to hear of really considerable progress compared to what we, including you, have had to live with for the last couple of years. So my question has to do with functional working circumstances in the jail at the moment. Do you now have, or do you foresee in some short-term future having enough available and on-duty staff to start to allow inmates out of the lockdown situation? I'm particularly interested in those that maybe could be proven to have been vaccinated, who might be therefore a little less susceptible to infection.
So it really wasn't about staffing as much as it was about it being communicable. If you've got 67 inmates, they all congregate, they have their cliques. I sent out an email today because I found through my working over there, both corrections officers and inmates saying that, how the mask is policy is enforced with the inmates is kind of all over the place. So
I do have, maybe I can clarify my question, Kevin. I'm not talking about an entire pod. I'm talking about whoever's vaccinated in that pod. And I certainly think it would be wise to stipulate if they're outside their cell that they have to have a mask on.
Well, they do have a mask on.
Yeah.
And
okay.
I guess if I'm understanding you correctly, preferential treatment for those who've been vaccinated. Is that where you're kind of going with that?
Well, you can call it preferential treatment, or you can call it just a risk-based analysis of who's susceptible to infection. That's what I'm thinking. But the 23-hour lockdown, and we have an expert apparently from South Carolina who has indicated that that 1 hour short is the maximum, and it's been shortchanged. And I'm sure all of South Carolina is aware of this. But it just seems like the 1 hour limitation on being outside the cell, it served a completely legitimate function as far as I'm concerned in reducing infection and possibilities of infection. But for people who are vaccinated, it's kind of like they're being roped into a preventive program that seems not to be anywhere near as manifestly important as those who are not vaccinated. And so, it's not a punishment or a reward of any kind for anybody, other than it's a recognition that the purpose of the lockdown of inmates is to prevent infection, and those who are not susceptible to infection, if there's other logistical ways to manage that, I just wonder whether that's a feasible thing at this point.
Okay, so
yeah.
So we have two pods right now that are locked down, with the exception of 30 minutes twice a day. So the 20 minutes, it was passe. That was a recommendation from our medical staff and CDC. We upped it to 30 minutes last week because I had inmates telling me they couldn't get all of their things they needed to get done. And CDC and medical signed off on that upgrade to 30. And then Saturday morning, Dr. Vore worked with the CDC to basically say, if we have no COVID in any of the pods, then those pods can go back to normal operation. They have to wear their mask and they're split level. So the two pods right now are the ones where we have cases that are locked down for the 30 minutes. Now, to answer your question, Commissioner, and I didn't mean it as preferential. What I'm trying to say is we're balancing a climate with inmates that, quite frankly, some of the media reports haven't been real favorable. but they also know what's going on in the real light as well. And we're trying to balance that. So I guess the only way that would work out is if somehow we were able to get all of the people that were vaccinated into one pod, and then, allow them a little bit more flexibility. We have mandated as of today, and this is only for public health purposes, that anyone working in the kitchen, because we had to take out the crew that's in there based on the fact of what we found out today with the testing. We have a new pod group of inmates that are going in, and the requirement is they have to be vaccinated and they have to submit to a test every day. What does that do? It says at that moment in time, they're not carrying COVID, but we all know that the next day, even if they're vaccinated, they could be a carrier. So I don't know, Commissioner, if that would work or not. There have been some other ideas thrown out where we do certain things for vaccinated versus not vaccinated. My fear is, and I'm not an attorney, but there could be an issue with inmates suggesting, hey, I have a right to say no, and I'm being discriminated against. I don't know. Maybe some incentive that I'm not thinking of now that would not make it look like a discrimination type thing might work, but that's my thought at first blush. I'm not saying I have the exact answers, and I'm surely not sitting here saying that everything we're doing is 100% right, because we're still flying a plane and building it at the same time.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm glad to hear everybody's thinking about the possibility, at least, of loosening those ties in any way that makes good sense. If you were hoping to talk to a lawyer, you came to the right place 3 times. But my 2 cents is that people who have the possibility of being involved in an infectious disease have been isolated without legal or constitutional issue for not just for a couple of 100 years in the United States, but for time immemorial in all kinds of societies. I mean, that's just, an infectious disease is much less of an issue today, and that's maybe why we don't really feel real confident about how we deal with it than it ever was at any time previous to today. So, I think you can, if there's a legitimate health related issue, you are allowed. It's not a violation of anybody's rights to say you can't be in a situation where you could contract something and communicate it to somebody else. And that's 1/3 of all the legal opinions. Well, actually, probably 1/5 of all the legal opinions you could get from all 3 of us. So.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate your input. Does any other commissioner have comments or questions that they have of the sheriff at this moment? Seeing none, I'll move on to the next informational update. It's ARPA application process, and call on Sandy Warren, a facilities staff report. Sandra?
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much, Commissioner Gordon. So you guys probably know who I am. I'm Sandra Warren. I was the former Community Development Block Grant Coordinator for the county, and recently transitioned to the Compliance Management Auditor position here at the county. So in your packet was a pre-application that we'll be presenting to the community. So we've essentially identified our internal needs. We initially received that, or in total, we received $57 million in ARPA funds. And so we initially looked at that and identified our critical needs internally. And now we're going to open this up to external applicants, of which of the 57, we're currently going to open it up 11 million of that to external applicants. And what we're doing is we're prioritizing our funding. We're looking at trying to identify our critical needs for our community. And we've outlined 5 categories that we think would be best fit for that critical need, which are housing, infrastructure, healthcare, workforce training, and homelessness. we're asking that everyone that's interested in applying, fill out the pre-application. So this is typically done in a lot of federal programs, and we do this to gain a better insight into what our community needs are. So we know that we've received written requests so far, and we also will allow us to open this up to kind of a broader range of service providers, and we can get all that information from them of what they're thinking about might qualify for ARPA. We'll identify whether or not that's actually eligible. And then we'll look at, is it really a critical need? Do we need to take care of this now? Or is this something that, well, it might be a critical need, but we can probably pass it up for now, and maybe we can put it on the back burner. And if that's the case, then we'll ask those people that are able to use the funds right away and do meet those critical needs and eligible uses to then go to a formal application process. So rather than just a proposal where they're telling us what they'd like to use the funds for, we're asking them to solidify those dollar amounts as you go through that application. We ask them to identify some more clarifying questions about what do you really think these funds are going to be used for, what your timeline is for these projects, because of course, as we know, the ARPA funds do expire. And so we want to make sure that anything that we're going to fund is going to fit into that parameter and that time frame. And then we also ask some more clarifying questions of like what's your other sources of funding and things like that, which are pretty important in determining whether or not we should move on to that full application process. And with these categories being as broad as they are, we want to make sure that each application that we create after this pre-application process is catered to that specific category. So a housing application is going to be different than a public service application. And this is where the pre-app is going to help us outline those application in that process. We are going to request that there be a minimum grant request of $100,000. And then again, this is also kind of looking at this process from a very strategic and thoughtful way, so that we can really saturate all of the funds that we have available to what needs to be identified and is identified as a critical need. So I think I'm going to stop there and see if you guys have any questions about the application, or maybe if there's anything you want to specifically talk about the pre-app.
Does any commissioner have questions of Sandra at this point? Sandra, thank you very much for what you've put forth. In reading the application, it puts forth or requires some pretty substantial information, which is very appropriate in my mind. I guess what I missed was the $100,000 minimum. But to me, what that shows is that we're very serious about what we're going to do in this particular category, and that the projects of that size, which into some communities are very substantial, or some areas are very substantial, sends that kind of a signal. Thank you. Any questions of Sandra as they asked? Jim?
I don't really have a question. I just want to say I was glad to see the pre-app, I guess you'd call it post-app, post-pre-app process. I think that's pretty solid.
Okay. Well, seeing there's nothing else, Sandra, thank you very, very much. And good job. As a lot of our staff from the county performs, we really appreciate that. Move on to comments from the public. Travis, have we had any communications from the public that we should be expressing at this point?
We have not.
And I remind the public, if they're online immediately, to submit comments to Kennedy, and it's KENNEDY at Cumberland County, all one word, .org. during the meeting, because your input is greatly appreciated. Since we have nothing there and we have no consent agenda approvals, I'll move on to new business. And now we have two. The first is the City of Portland Homeless Shelter Support ARPA funding partnership request. And this is just informational items, but we have some questions. So I would ask Jim Cloutier, you're the one that asked to have this brought into new business. Would you take the forefront, please?
Sure. My question really, and I may have scanned the material too quickly and not noticed what exactly we were doing next, but I was wondering, and I'm glad Sandra is still with us. What's the next step, both for the Tedford House and the City of Portland? I guess they call that the big or the large, or the, depending on who you're talking to, the massive or the undersized Riverside Street project, which may be affected, I think, by a referendum that's going to happen in 2 weeks, but it might possibly be affected. But I'm just wondering, what is the approval status from here?
So like everyone else, they're an external applicant, so we will require that they submit a pre-application to us. And then from there, they'll have to complete an actual thorough application, a full application, so that we can see, especially for housing and construction of affordable housing or transitional housing, we want to look at pro formas. We want to identify where the gap is in the financial need. And then, of course, the critical investment. Are we making a critical investment? What's the timeline? I think that based on the timeline that I saw, that it would fit in terms of ARPA expenditures and things like that. It certainly qualifies, but they would go through that same process, and the ARPA advisory committee would then be looking at those pre-applications and applications and identifying which ones they want to present and put forward to the commissioners for approval.
So,
Like
so comparing those concepts, at least, and they're pretty well, it seems like they're pretty well developed concepts at this point. They address both housing and homelessness as two of the four issues that we're putting in the forefront. Is that basically true?
Yeah, homelessness. I mean, they also have the component of public health as well, because they're providing services.
Sure.
Within, at least at the homeless shelter, when I looked at that as well, and of course Tedford shelter too. So they all have components of that, mental health and housing. Yep.
So, and at this stage in the process, I mean, I think they're both very substantial proposals as they've been outlined to us. If something changes in Portland because of a referendum, or if in the Tedford House operation, they find that they don't have they don't see feasibility for some reason and want to change their application, that's all consistent with what we understand to be the process, and they would have the flexibility to get to that end result at some point. Is that fair to say?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. That's all I really cared about. Thank you.
Are there any other questions of Sandra at this point? Seeing none, there is no requirement for a motion to accept this other, just a comment that this was information. And again, Sandra, we really appreciate what you're doing. Keep us on the straight and narrow, please. I'll move on to, in new business, item 21085. May I have a motion to approve a proclamation recognizing the Domestic Violence Awareness Month? And, well, may I have that motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. I'll give this to Jim for discussion as to what it is, and we'll have a roll call vote after discussion.
Thank you, Chairman. This item is being brought forth as October each year is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And it's always a pleasure bringing this item forward and continuing to raise awareness of domestic violence within our towns, our county, and our region. A lot is being done around domestic violence, and we're in hopes of continuing that. As you'll see, the next item will continue that even further. We want to recognize Faye Lupi and the Violence Intervention Program that we have here in the county that has been in existence for over 20 years, really being the convener and keeping the discussion alive within our state of Maine around domestic violence and how we can develop mitigating factors around reducing domestic violence within our state. So thank you, Faye, for all the work that you do. So this proclamation is just bringing awareness. Once again, this month, the Facilities Department has done a fantastic job lighting up the courthouse purple, which is the color for domestic violence. So if you're out after dark, swing by the courthouse. It's magnificent, all lit up. So hopefully that really brings awareness to people driving by, walking by, that this is the month that we really need to bring awareness to domestic violence, but it's really a year-long item that we should be putting on the front burner. So with that, again, thank you for allowing me to present this, and I'll field any questions or even phase on to field questions if need be. Thank you.
Do the commissioners have any questions on this? Seeing none, then I will ask for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Cloutier,
Yes.
Commissioner Coward,
You're
verbal.
Been muted, yes. There we go, yes.
Great. Commissioner Jameson,
Yes.
Commissioner Ratonis,
Yes.
Commissioner Gordon.
yes. It's unanimous. Well, thank you, people. I really appreciate that. And Jim, thanks for that explanation. Although I know in the dark crevices of the county somewhere, Faye had something to do with this. And I'm going to bring that young lady forward because item 21086 may have a motion to approve the acceptance of the Office of Violence Against Women Grant Award in the amount of $394,640. Faye?
So moved. Second.
Faye, would you please introduce this topic and give us an explanation of why we should consider accepting this?
Thank you, Commissioner Gordon. Travis, can I share my screen?
You should be able to, Faye. If you hover down below, you should see a green share
It
screen button.
indicates that host disabled participant screen sharing.
Oh,
You're being a bad host, Travis.
here. I'm going to grant you executive powers. There you go.
Whoa.
Super. Here we go. There. Oops, let me see if I can get back to the beginning here. Okay, I think I know most of you. I'm Faye Lupi. I coordinate the Violence Intervention Partnership, which is our county coordinated response to domestic violence and also sexual assault as well. And as you know, this is the action item, whether to accept the 2021 to 2024 grant award from the Office of Violence Against Women to support our coordinated response work of the Violence Intervention Partnership. Usually I know most of you know what this is, but for people who are watching also, our coordinated community response is it's for keeping domestic violence and sexual assault victims safe in the community and holding offenders accountable and changing the culture in our community. Here are our list of partners in this grant. Involves Cumberland County District Attorney's Office, our Sheriff's Office through these doors, SARSM, Maine Pretrial, Department of Corrections, and our law enforcement partners. This is just a list of the grant awards from the Department of Justice, the Office of Violence Against Women to date. And we're very excited actually to receive this, the notice of this award, because they were giving 15 extra points to applicants who had never received an award before out of 100. So I was concerned that we might not make the cut. So I was very pleased to find out that we did. So what are we going to provide with this grant? First, our key components include a strong coordinated legal system response to domestic violence and sexual assault through our domestic violence unit in our DA's office, our domestic violence probation officer who works with the courts on judicial monitoring, our Maine pretrial DV case manager, who also runs our electronic monitoring project for domestic violence offenders, and our high-risk response teams, which I'll talk more about in a minute. Another key component is the outreach, advocacy, support, and resources to underserved victims by Through These Doors and SARSM. Our focus on underserved victims in this particular grant are those who are incarcerated in our jail and our state prison, new Mainers, and high-risk victims. Another component is we do a lot of training for law enforcement, professionals, prosecutors, attorneys, professionals and others across the board on the dynamics of domestic violence and sexual assault, risk assessment, strangulation, and stalking. I know I'll be doing some because we were able to pass legislation in this past session in order to increase the amount of training for guardians ad litem that perform a very important service, but only were receiving 90 minutes in their core training to learn everything they needed to know about domestic violence, which there's no way I can talk that fast. I've provided that training for a number of years, and we're very excited that it's now going to be 6 hours. So finally, policy review and development is another key component. We've been working for the past year with statewide partners and our judicial department on how to better to close the gaps in our firearms relinquishment process when someone has been ordered to relinquish their firearms as part of a protection from abuse order for domestic violence victims. We had a lot of gaps in that process, and I'm very excited that we've made sea-changing changes in the process that should go into effect this month when the judicial branch is ready. So I'm very excited about that. We have some new components this time, which I just want to cover briefly. Our formerly sexual assault advocate for the Latinx community has been expanded to be a multicultural outreach advocate so that she can provide outreach and support and resources for sexual assault victims from all of our new Mainer communities. Some of you are probably familiar with Through These Doors EPIC program. The county has been a great support for that program in other venues, other ways, but it's the Enhanced Police Intervention Collaboration. This grant will support part-time, a part of a supervisor for the EPIC teams that work very closely with our county law enforcement departments and providing EPIC services to high-risk victims. And our Portland Police Department has not had an EPIC advocate or a high-risk team before now, and they have joined this grant as a partner and will be working with our EPIC program to provide services and support for high-risk victims. We also will be supporting our high-risk response teams at the county level and at the Portland Police and other law enforcement agency. These are cutting-edge, evidence-based, multidisciplinary teams that get together once a month to do intervention planning for cases that have been identified as high risk. Maine and our project and Maine as a whole is recognized as a national leader in the implementation of risk assessment But one of the key parts of that is once you identify a high-risk case, what do you do with that information? So we have adopted this evidence-based model of high-risk response teams where our law enforcement partners and prosecutors and advocates get together once a month and focus on safety planning and intervention in these cases that have been identified. There's also some funding in this grant that has been incredibly important during COVID. We had some of it in the prior grant for transitional safety supports for when victims and survivors are leaving a dangerous relationship and they might need new locks, they might need a storage facility, they might need a bus ticket. So these are transitional safety supports as they transition to a safer environment. And finally, we have a new component here is partnership between Through These Doors and main pretrial services that has again been recognized as a nationally recognized program, where they try and identify and provide gender responsive supervision for justice system involved female victims. That is, victims and survivors in the Cumberland County Jail who have a history of domestic or sexual assault as victims, and identifying them and referring them to Through These Doors, and also providing gender responsive supervision by main pretrial when they're released into the community. Normally for this slide on results, I have lots of numbers. Those numbers are all in the annual report for 2020, but what I really wanted to focus on here was the incredible work that our partners have done in pivoting with creative ways and effective ways to provide services and advocacy and resources to victim survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault and trafficking. This has involved, the pandemic has, you probably have been aware and have read, has led to increased danger to victims who don't have the resources to leave abusive situations. So these agencies have provided telephone and hotline support, virtual accompaniment to the hospital or other resources, virtual support groups, shifting our violence intervention groups to virtual, expanded virtual legal representation and consultation for victims who need protection orders. And basically keeping our coordinated community response in place as all of our partners have had to hunker down and do their core work. And we've worked with partners to help solve access to justice challenges, people, how to get legal representation, protection orders, and so on, and access to the courts. This is my final slide, and it's just a little bit of feedback from our partners about how these funds from our current grant have helped. Through These Doors advocates pointed out that many people have received life-changing help from the funds and from this project. And another was from a training that I did. ODAR is one of our risk assessment tools, and part of my work is to train law enforcement on how to use that and to enhance victim safety in the community. Finally, I'd just like to thank you all for your support for this project over the years, for the proclamation that was just confirmed, that was just approved, for the purple lights that are great. Everybody knows the purple lights at the county, and just for your support, particularly during these difficult times of the pandemic. And just close with a recommendation that this award of funding be accepted, and an offer to answer any questions you might have.
Faye, thank you very, very much. And let me express as a chair, we certainly more than appreciate your ability to obtain additional funding to keep such a fantastic program going. Do the commissioners have any comments or questions of Faye? Seeing none, Faye, I have one. Is there a process, or have there been a process developed whereby a third party could report on domestic violence? I mean, I've in communities and in talking with people that I've been discussing this program with, that they say that there's a number of situations where an individual doesn't want to get involved in the neighbor next door, but they know that the issue is more than of strife.
So the way I would answer that question is the 24-hour hotline that the DV projects and the Maine Coalition to End Domestic Violence operate is not just for victims and survivors. It's for anyone who wants to know how they can help, or wants to know, is this something, what can I do about this? Physicians use it, what can I do? Neighbors use it, family members use it. So there are people available on this hotline 24 hours a day to help answer questions just like that. You know, what can they do? You know, we have this new process in Maine, this sort of yellow flag process, you know, and that could be helpful, but it's really the people who answer the hotline are experts in working with victims of domestic violence and their families and their neighbors and their supporters, and they're the best ones to answer those questions and to kind of on a case-by-case basis give advice on the best way to proceed, on how to provide support or report. You know, perhaps there are children involved and there needs to be a report to DHHS, Child Protective. You know, there's lots of different ways, but each case is individual, and I would highly recommend recommending that hotline, because it's not just for survivors. It's for our community.
Thank you very much. Do any of the other commissioners have questions? Seeing none, thank you, Faye. And I can't say enough. The commission has spoken about it with you not being there many times about the services provided by this program that you've been able to obtain for us. Thank you very, very much. So what I would ask, if there's no further questions, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Cloutier. All right, we'll come
Jim?
back to you. Commissioner Coward, you're muted. Oh, you're muted. It's all right.
I keep going in and off so you don't hear me coughing. So yes, yes from me.
Great.
Yes,
Okay. Commissioner Cloutier,
yes.
Commissioner Jameson,
Yes.
Commissioner Ratonis,
Yes.
Commissioner Gordon.
Yes.
Great.
It's unanimous. And again, thank you, Faye, from the whole commission. We really appreciate the opportunity you've presented us to be able to perform such a function and drive this issue forward. Okay, the next is comments from the county manager.
Thank you, Commissioner. I have one comment this evening, and that is just a follow-up to my email I sent you all yesterday outlining the game plan that the Cross Insurance Arena and myself have worked through for upcoming events. The next event at the Cross Insurance Arena is on October 22nd, and that's opening night for the Maine Mariners. And it proceeds to go for 2 additional games, I think, to finish out October. A lot of discussion has been back and forth over the last couple of weeks on what we should do as an arena and as it relates to COVID. I think we've seen many articles in the newspapers from different venues and settings that have large events on what they're requiring. And Melanie and I came up with a game plan to roll out, because we feel as though we should roll something out sooner than later, giving people a heads up well in advance of the first game for the Mariners. We've decided to kind of go with the trend of other indoor facilities and require vaccinations or a test within 72 hours of the event. We would also strongly recommend the wearing of masks. And those under 12 who are not vaccinated would need to wear a mask regardless. And so that's the game plan that we have at this time. A lot of education material will be going out once the press release goes out. But we're hoping we strike the right balance in keeping everyone safe and enjoying the events at the Cross Insurance Arena, as the schedule's getting very busy over the next 5 or 6 months. There was one other item I was going to talk about around the Cross Insurance Arena, but completely spaced my mind. But just wanted to air that with all the commissioners, field any questions that the commissioners may have on our approach to see whether we're going down the right road or whether it's acceptable to you all. Any questions?
Tom.
Yes. How are you proposing to document vaccination status?
We would require a copy of the vaccination card and or some kind of documentation showing that they have had a negative test result in 72 hours.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling is more people should be vaccinated, and requiring documentation will, put that a little extra bit of incentive for that. I went to a musical the other week and I had to take my vaccine passport with me, and I had no problem doing it because it makes sure that we protect each other. And the vaccines only work if they have a large uptake. Other than that, if that doesn't happen, we're gonna be just muttering along with a COVID sort of semi-pandemic thing for months or years. So enough people get vaccinated, we can put this all behind us and we go back to normal life. So I'm happy that you're asking for documentation. I think that's critical in making this work. So good job.
Any other comments, questions? Susan?
Do you have anything in place for the person who doesn't show up with their card and starts to cause an issue?
That's a good question, Commissioner. I bet the Cross Insurance Arena has that, because they've had events in September that voters have asked for vaccination cards to be shown. I don't have an answer for you at this point, but I can report back on how the Cross Insurance Arena handled that back in September.
Okay, yeah.
Further questions, Commissioner Jameson?
This is a simple one, Jim, but what is the team? What are the Mariners requiring of their players, and what's the league requiring of their players? Is it 100% vax or?
The league just came out with a number of guidelines. I believe it is. And there will be no interactions at this time between players and fans. So there will be that expectation going in that fans will not be able to hover around the tunnel that the Mariners come out of. There'll be some great separation away from the team in hopes of keeping the team as safe as possible.
Good, thank you.
Any other commissioners have a question or et cetera at this?
One of the last, excuse me, Commissioner,
Yep.
I remember what I was going to talk about. The Mariners are contemplating also creating a section that if someone doesn't feel comfortable sitting next to someone that might choose not to wear their mask during the game, the Mariners will relocate them into this section so that they feel comfortable attending the game. I compare this to if you ever go down to the Red Sox game, they have a section out in left field. They call it the CVS Family Zone, and it's for families to go and yeah, maybe not have as much swearing and there's no beer drinking and things like that in that section. So I kind of relate that section at the Cross Insurance Arena to a very similar setup.
Any other questions of Jim on this topic? Jim, do you have any other topics you wish to discuss at this point?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Commissioner.
All right. Comments from the executive staff. Alex?
I have nothing this month. You'll all be hearing from me an awful lot in the next few months as we enter into budgets, year end, and year opening. So get a quiet month from me this time.
Are you intimating that we have a copacetic budget?
We have a really active finance committee this year, and it's been very interesting thus far. And they're starting to hit us with some very good questions. For the current budget year, yes, we look like we're okay.
Thank you. That was an unfair question. Travis?
Nothing tonight, Commissioner.
Oh, come on. Well, here we are in the marketer, and we're in the covert season, and we've got a state legislature that's just gone back into session with how many bills?
For next
300
year?
some odd additional bills?
Are you talking about for next year?
Yeah, for the next session.
We have a couple of months to review them and decide if there's anything that we want to submit. As far as COVID, I'm going to say as little as possible tonight.
I don't blame you. On the other hand, you know, you get your work cut out for you with all that's been submitted. I am really surprised that amount of bills were considered or at least submitted for as emergencies. Whatever. Going from the executives, well, wait a minute. We've got another couple of executive people here, don't we? We've got Sandra. Sandra, you have anything you want to say to this august body? No? Okay. Kathleen? No? All right. Comments from the county commissioners. Susan Watonis.
No, I don't have anything this month.
Thank you. Commissioner Jameson.
Thank you, Steve. Just briefly, once again, I would applaud all the county executive staff and managers for the great job they're doing, not just with the ARPA, but through the whole COVID process. Kevin at the jail as well. And just would encourage the public, you know, the county is doing great. We're at a great rate. The state now is at 80% of adults, but we still are having some upticks. So if you haven't been vaccinated, go out and get vaccinated. Do yourself and your families a protection and a favor. So we can get to as close as herd immunity as possible in the state of Maine. So we can finally beat this vaccine. I would also say that we're approaching high school tournament time in another week. And so go out and support the teams, whether they, whatever level they're competing at. These high school students have worked hard for the last couple of months, and they weren't allowed to participate in tournaments a year ago. So go out and support your high school teams, and everyone stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Cloutier.
Oh, I don't have too much tonight. I'd just say the comment from Alex Kimball that we might be okay for next year. That's about as enthusiastic as I've ever heard any finance director 2 months before a budget was adopted talk about financial circumstances. So I'm very glad to hear that. I want to compliment both the sheriff and Don Brewer on driving us forward with useful ideas and activity to address a lot of the staffing difficulties at the county jail. And I'll yield the rest of my time to Don Brewer, who hasn't had anything to say yet tonight, but may have a comment or two for us.
Yeah, and I've got to apologize to Don. I didn't call him out, nor did I call out the sheriff, which I will afterwards. Don? There you go.
Yeah, I thought I was going to fly under the radar.
You're too important.
I just wanted to follow up on the sheriff's report earlier that we seem to be turning the corner a little bit on hiring some correction officers. I think there's been really stepped up recruitment effort, sign placements, a more expanded outreach. Despite some of the things that we often read in the newspaper that work against us, we are going in the right direction, I think. And I'm also pleased to report this evening that we have hired a recruiter. That was a new position for the county. We interviewed 4 candidates, and our preferred candidate has accepted our offer, and will be starting probably sometime in the month of November. But that's going to really greatly enhance and focus our recruiting efforts, not only for corrections staff, but for other difficult to hire positions at Cumberland County, whether they be trades or IT or facilities or whatever they may be. So we're very encouraged by that. And we have a plan moving forward on how we can really maximize the recruiter, working with staff at the jail to really focus on correction staff out of the gate. So happy about that. It's been a long grind, working with COVID, but we're still standing, and we're continuing to do the best in all of the main CDC guidelines, try to keep our people safe. Along COVID lines, as we did last year, just as an abundance of caution, we are going to our annual open enrollment for benefits for all of our county employees. Rather than have in-person job fairs where large groups of employees meet in a room with benefit providers, we are going to do as we did last year and set up individual appointment opportunities for the individual benefits providers for employees who have questions. And we'll send out mass information on any benefits changes or premium changes and such. And that worked well last year, so we'll continue, I think, with that this year. So that's what I have this evening.
Thank you, Don. I'd like to express our thanks to him and to the whole staff, not just human resources, but the rest of them, because some of the problems that we've had in recognition and the items that have been brought forth by the sheriff of not being able to hire people, we've recognized those programs, and it's not that you can turn that situation around on a dime. We need to turn it around as we can. And it's taken a while to be able to, for example, as Don Brewer mentioned, bring somebody on to be a recruiter. It is hard at this time, and there's no employer that will tell you that they can find people as they need them, as soon as they need them. And as a result, we're struggling. We admit it, but we've recognized it, and we are hiring the resources so that we can bring them forth and make us move forward. Again, I appreciate it, Don, and I appreciate the rest of the staff and the assistance that they've given the commission as far as being able to fulfill the requirements that we need. Sheriff, I didn't mean to do that, but under executive staff, and I'm not that I'm classifying you there, but if you have issues you want to make before we employ our last commissioner here, I would defer to my mistake and allow you to please say something.
Yeah, no worries. I appreciate it, Commissioner. I wasn't going to say anything because I took a lot of time earlier, but I think it's important to mention, as you know, the command staff and myself have been working in the jail. And I can tell you, having never worked in a jail, I've seen and stepped way outside of my comfort zone on a lot of things in the last couple of weeks that I wasn't aware of. But I think it's important for you to know that 2 weeks ago we thought we might have to dig into the ranks of law enforcement, bring them in to work in the jail, and privately people have sent me messages saying, "Hey, whatever we need to do, you give us a holler, and we'll come in and work in the jail for you to get the job done." Working with the corrections officers, I've worked with probably a dozen of them who have kind of told me what to do, told me where I was good and where I wasn't so good, and some of the corrections things that I have to do. But I've gotten the distinct impression that they've said, we're mission oriented, we will get through this, we'll get it done. So given everything that's gone on, I can tell you that you've got a team that's ready to pull in the right direction, pull in one direction, and they will get it done. And they've told me. So that's all I have, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that information. And it's that kind of wording that I like to hear, not only from your department, but from all the others, so the citizenry hears when it finally gets down that, yes, we are a team and we do work together and we can solve problems. Thank you for those words. Tom, I didn't mean to hold you off to the last, but Commissioner Tom Coward.
Not a problem, Steve. Thank you very much. First off, my deepest expression of gratitude to our staff, including the sheriff and the jail. This is, you are the folks that keep the keep the county functioning. We check in every so often and make sure the things are ticking over, and we try to look ahead and see what we need to be anticipating in the future. But it's Sandra and Sheriff Joyce and Don Brewer and Catherine and and Alex and all the folks on staff. I'm not excluding Jim Gailey from all of that. That kind of make it easy for us to feel comfortable at night that things are going well. I would push out to staff and everybody in the county. All county employees really should get vaccinated. We've said that a couple of different times. The reason we're meeting here on a virtual meeting as opposed to being in a conference room somewhere is because of the pandemic, and the easiest key to the pandemic is to get vaccinated. The history of that, I'm not going to go into great detail about it because everybody's, I'm sure, has heard it 100 times. My mother, who recently passed, had a scar the size of a quarter on her arm, as many people of her generation did, from smallpox vaccination. Smallpox used to ravage the entire world and was a major contributor in shortening the life expectancy of humans for centuries. It has been completely eradicated through vaccination. And obviously COVID is a little bit of a different thing, but the principle applies. As if we all get vaccinated, we will be out from under this. So I would urge that on all department heads to try to make sure that folks are taking advantage of the technology that we have to get us through the current unpleasantness that we have. And so having said that, thank you all very much. It is coming up to Halloween. We got to look out for little kids. Speaking about community safety, we need to look out for little kids who I hope are getting out and getting to do Halloween this year. That was always one of my favorite holidays as a child, and one of my favorite holidays when I had little kids at home. And we do have to watch out for each other, especially with small children wandering around the streets after dark. So I'm looking forward to this. I hope we have an actually good Halloween this year. And anyway, thank you very much. That's all.
Thank you, Tom. I think I've I've spoke enough during this period. And I've probably got out the topics that I wanted to put forth anyway. So I have no comments at this point. The next item that we have is an executive session. And for the public, we'll be discussing external appointments, but we will be not making any motions once we come out of executive session. We will, and as a result, we'll just proceed to adjournment. You're welcome to stay and see what we're doing after the executive session, but that's your prerogative. But there will be no action, so I suggest that this probably is the end of the meeting for you. I would like a motion to go into executive session in accordance with MRSA 4056A discussion of appointments. May I have a roll call vote, please?
I'm sorry, I didn't get who seconded.
Second.
I'll second it.
Wait, Commissioner Cloutier,
Yes.
Commissioner Coward,
Yes.
Commissioner Jameson,
Yes.
Commissioner Bertonis,
Yes.
Commissioner Gordon.
Yes. It's unanimous. We're in executive